Back in 1898, two male lions decided they weren't going to eat zebras or buffalo or anything you normally expect. Nope. They went full horror movie, dragging workers out of their tents at night and literally eating them. This wasn't some remote village. This happened during the construction of a major railway, and it got so bad that the whole project basically hit pause. Some people say they killed over 100 workers. Others think that's an exaggeration. But one thing's for sure. They weren't just hunting. They were terrorizing. Let's break down what actually happened, what science has figured out since, and why these lions didn't play by the rules. The Uganda Railway was supposed to be the crown jewel of British infrastructure in East Africa. It would connect the port of Mombasa to Lake Victoria and eventually stretch toward Uganda, opening trade routes and tightening Britain's grip on the region. The area they had to build through, Tsavo, a dry, harsh, unforgiving part of southeastern Kenya. Not exactly the easiest place to build a railroad. To make it happen, the British imported thousands of workers from India. Most of them were laborers, engineers, carpenters, ordinary guys looking for work, not trained soldiers. They were dropped into the middle of a wild landscape, under the authority of British officers who were more focused on progress than safety. The conditions were brutal. Days were hot enough to burn through clothes. Nights were freezing. Malaria, dysentery, and all sorts of tropical illnesses ripped through the camps. The food was basic, the shelter was worse, and the isolation didn't help. Still, work moved forward. Trestles were built, tracks were laid. The line was creeping across the land until the first man disappeared. No one saw anything, just a missing worker and some drag marks in the dirt. It was strange, maybe even tragic, but nobody thought too much of it at the time. Then it happened again and again, and the tone shifted fast. The pattern became impossible to ignore. A man would go to sleep in his tent and be gone by morning. Some nights it was quiet. Other times, people heard a scream, then silence. Tents were slashed open. Footprints led off into the bush. Blood, if there was any, dried before sunrise. The attacks weren't wild or frenzied. They were quiet, deliberate, and frighteningly consistent. At first, the workers thought it might be a single rogue lion, but as the bodies kept disappearing, it became clear this wasn't the work of one desperate animal. This was organized, precise, repetitive. Fear spread fast. People tried building thorn barriers, lighting fires, even sleeping in trees. It didn't help. The lions adjusted. They circled the camp, waiting for the right moment, and slipped through whatever defenses were in place. No one felt safe anymore. Men refused to sleep. Some tried leaving in the middle of the night, risking dehydration, exposure, or other predators just to escape. A few disappeared into the bush and were never seen again. The railway project started to fall apart. Workers walked off the job. Progress slowed. Supply deliveries were delayed. The entire site was coming undone, not because of sabotage or war, but because two lions had learned that humans were the easiest prey around. When people finally saw the lions clearly, they realized they didn't look like the ones in picture books or military maps. These were two massive adult males, but they had no manes, just muscular, bare-headed predators that looked more like giant shadows than lions. In the Tsavo region, that's actually pretty normal. Scientists say it has to do with the hot climate and evolutionary pressure. But back then, the look just added to the fear. They didn't look majestic. They looked like something built to kill. They didn't act like normal lions either. Most lions hunt large game, zebra, buffalo, maybe a lone antelope. They tend to work in groups, ambush their prey, and go back into hiding. These two, they were surgical, smart, focused. They hunted like they were watching every move the workers made, studying the patterns, waiting for the best time to strike. One of them even dragged a man out of a locked railway cart. That wasn't random. That was method. It got to the point where people stopped calling them animals. Some workers believed they were spirits, demons, maybe even one single lion that couldn't die. And when people are dying every few nights with no explanation, those stories start to feel a lot more believable. The man in charge of the project was Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson. He was an engineer by training, a hunter by necessity. He had a deadline to meet, and now his workforce was either terrified or gone. At first, Patterson tried what he could. He ordered deeper trenches, stronger barriers, round-the-clock patrols. Nothing stopped the lions. Eventually, Patterson realized he'd have to do it himself. He built a makeshift platform in a tree, tied up a donkey as bait, and waited. For hours, for nights, rifle in hand, no movement, no sound. Finally, one of the lions came into the clearing. Patterson fired. The lion dropped, then scrambled back into the bush. He'd hit it, but it wasn't dead. He tracked it through thick brush and thorn scrub. After several more bullets and a long pursuit, he finally brought it down. One was dead, one to go. But the second lion wouldn't go quietly. If the first lion had been clever, the second lion was downright ruthless. It kept attacking, bolder than before. It charged through fire-lit camps, tore through barriers. Patterson even said it once tried to drag a man through a pile of supplies, like the barricades weren't even there. He tracked it across the region for days. He wounded it, then lost it, found it again, shot it again. Still alive. It took 9 more days to finish the job. Patterson fired 3 volleys into the lion before it finally went down. 9 feet long from nose to tail and heavier than any lion he'd ever hunted. When it died, the nightmare finally ended. The workers came back, the railway moved forward, and Patterson, he became a legend. But the scars were permanent. Patterson would later write that the lions killed 135 people. It was the number that made headlines, sold books, and turned the story into legend. But was it true? Even back then, people were skeptical. Some suggested he inflated the number to boost his reputation. Others thought it might have included deaths from disease, desertion, or wild guesses. It wasn't until the early 2000s that scientists finally got a real answer. Researchers at the Field Museum in Chicago, where the mounted lion skins were displayed, ran isotope tests on the lion's bones and teeth. They wanted to find out what the lions had actually been eating in their final months. The results were pretty clear. One lion likely consumed about 10 humans. The other, around 20. So, the real number sits closer to 30 to 40 people, not 135, but still far more than any normal predator would ever target. That didn't make the story smaller. It just made it more real. So why did it happen? Lions don't usually eat people unless something's gone seriously wrong. And in Tsavo, a lot had. First, a disease called rinderpest had swept through the region just a few years earlier, wiping out huge herds of wild animals. Prey was scarce. The lions were starving. Second, the railway camps weren't exactly doing great with sanitation. Workers were dying from cholera and malaria, and many of the bodies were buried shallow, if at all. Some were just left in the open. That means the lions may have started as scavengers, and once they realized how easy human targets were, especially sleeping ones, the switch from scavenger to hunter probably didn't take much. Add to the fact that one lion had a severe tooth abscess, a painful infection that would have made biting into tough hides nearly impossible. And suddenly, soft, slow humans started to look like the best option. It wasn't a bloodthirsty rampage. It was adaptation, a response to a broken environment. After everything, Patterson kept the skins and skulls. Years later, they were sold to the Field Museum in Chicago, where taxidermists rebuilt the lions from what was left. Today, they're still there, still staring blankly ahead, still frozen in time. Their story inspired books, documentaries, and the 1996 film The Ghost in the Darkness. But more importantly, it stayed alive because it struck a nerve. It wasn't just about lions, it was about fear, about nature pushing back, about what happens when the system breaks down and the top predator rewrites the rules. Over a century later, the Tsavo lions are still teaching scientists how predators adapt, how myths are born, and how even the most powerful empire in the world once had to stop everything because 2 lions got smart. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment with what you would like to see in the following videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.